Welcome back to Rock Forever. We got a special guest. He is the longtime concert promoter with all the stories and the author of the brand new book, All Excess. So please welcome Danny ZELISKO.
Hey now.
Well, Danny, we know you have definitely earned your stripes in the concert promotion business. Not an easy business at all. We always tell everybody music business, probably one of the toughest businesses in the world. Very few survive. And I know you're a big sports lover growing up, sports memorabilia and all that. What made you want to make that plunge, into the risky world of the concert promotion business?
Yeah, it's interesting. When anybody says to me, "Hey, I want to be a promoter," how did you do that, or blah blah blah, my initial answer is always, don't do that. Don't do this. Gather your senses, go have a good night's sleep, and wake up and think about doing something else. It can be the most amazing business in the world, and it could also be a heartbreaking business. And I don't want to cast gloom and doom, but the fact is, for me, it's been fantastic. There's been more great times than bad times. But it's hard. You have to have the ability to suffer indignation from booking agents and managers. Very few times have I had problems with bands. It's more about the management and the agents. And I'm great friends with most, if not all, of the agents that are around right now. But over the years, there have been some mean people and some tough guys, and you got to have a little grit to put up with it. And I find these days that a lot of people they back off telling people what they really think. And I found as soon as I could give people an honest answer, straight from the heart, and a reaction on on the run, you got to be fast with these people. You're talking some of the toughest talkers and negotiators in the world, and you're swimming with sharks, and I'm proud to be one of them with them. But I'll tell you what, there was a lot of times where I wondered, is this what I should be doing? And the answer is now a resounding yes after 40 something years of doing it. I'm very happy that was the calling that I answered. I've always said I wanted to live in a town that had me for a promoter. And I say that because I really look after everything I can, whether it's the band or the audience or the hall or my staff or the people working there. You won't hear too many bad things about me, not to my face anyway. But it's a business that is not for the faint of heart. Let's go there.
Well, of course, the agent, the manager, the label, in essence, they're all out for themselves. Whether you make a profit or not, that's less of a concern to them and more of a profit for their company or themselves or their client. So,
well, yeah, you're right about that. And it's not so much just about the profit. It's about getting their way, about anything. I often find so many people in this business that, or trying to get in the business or find themselves in the business, who haven't actually flipped hamburgers at McDonald's. They don't know what it's like. Sometimes they're swift and great maneuvers, and they could end up being your boss. That happened to me once. A guy that was my boss after all these years of doing stuff, he was a complete imbecile, and he's telling me about the way it's going to be and how things are going to go. And that was when I kind of really decided in my mind that I would go back to just being me and do shows. And maybe I don't get to work with all of the big groups that I'd like to, or ones that I've been working with forever and ever. but whatever's left of the dignity I still have. So it was very nice not to be with that guy anymore. I won't say his name.
Well, yeah, you got to love what you do, but in the concert promotion business, all the costs have to be covered before you make a penny in profit. So a lot of times you're nervously awaiting, obviously an instant sellout. We all know those, but
When does that happen?
yeah, I mean when you're waiting for the walk up and not knowing if the walk up that day is going to push it, into the black, it's a stressful business.
It's funny when you use the word walk up, which is really, it's right off the tip of my tongue too, but it's an antiquated word for this reason. In the 80s, let's say the 80s especially, when I started doing shows like at the Coliseum here, where the Suns used to play, it's the big arena. The state fair is there every year, that I booked for 30 something years. And I did the Judas Priest show the first time they came to Phoenix. And it's like they had this huge show, but they weren't Judas Priest yet. They were Judas Priest. So in most halls, in most cities, they were doing 1,000, 2,000 people. I liked them here in Phoenix. We had a great radio station, KUPD, that played the hell out of them. And I knew we could do more people. And they were maybe $5,000, their guarantee back in the day. Same with Iron Maiden and Motley and Scorpions and Rat and all these great bands. But we did a $5 ticket. Everybody loves a deal. For $5, anybody's gone. And I did 5,000 people with Pat Travers when he had Crash and Burnout, which was one of my favorite records. But Priest came in, and I think Maiden was opening, if I'm not mistaken. And we charged $5, and we were getting 6, 8, 10,000 people. It was a much different thing when you only had to spend $5 or $10 back in the early 80s, which obviously was more money than it was then. But the bottom line is it was still only $5 to get it, to see one of these great shows. Nowadays, when you make a selection to go see a group, you got to make that painstaking decision. Do I go to the back of the main floor or upstairs or, in the balcony and spend this, or do I go for it and go down in front? And it's a difficult decision to make. But hey, let's face it, there ain't nothing like going to a show.
No, the live experience can't be replicated on a Zoom, a stream, a download, even a DVD. You can show as much as you can.
Yeah.
But the experience. I remember the first arena show I ever went to was in Dayton, Ohio, at the Elton John Yellow Brick Road tour. And I'm probably 15, and I walked through, the tunnel coming out of the entrance. And as the arena opens up, and I smell the herb and see the girls and, halter tops and people throwing beach balls, it was like a different world. It literally might as well have been a different planet at that point.
And there's nothing like it, is there?
No.
And I'm saying it kind of wistfully, just like you are right now, because I miss it so much. Going to the show, finally, after months of preparation, months of advertising, months of planning, just months in your face, you're responsible to this local audience, and you're responsible to the radio stations and the media and all these people, the bands, and finally the big day is there. I get giddy about it almost every time, the same way I did when I used to buy tickets for concerts myself. There's nothing like the anticipation of show day, and especially like who you're going with to the show, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, a new date, your buddies, whatever it is, but you're looking forward to a mighty time. And in this day and age, I dare you to tell me what's better, what's cooler than going to see, a big show or even a club show, but just somebody that means something to you as well as somebody else maybe that might be going with you. It's the greatest communication and interaction that I think a person can have.
Yeah, no, when the lights go out, for the headliner, that's a feeling you just can't replicate anywhere else. And
And
you're ready for adventure. And so many of the great acts really, prepare their opener. A lot of times the curtain's drawn. So all of a sudden the curtain opens and there's this unbelievable production in front of them.
and it's like, and let's face it, how many times in the last 10 years, 20 years, how many times can you say you went with this anticipation to a concert and somebody let you down and they were just awful? Not just an off night, but maybe they just were having too much fun before the show, which, by the way, doesn't really happen as much anymore. Because people are pros. I mean, it's their job, it's their career, and they know people are counting on them to be great. You've been looking forward to this for months. And I've had this conversation with people before. It's like, how can you go on stage like this? I mean, people paid to see you. They didn't pay to come and have a party with you in your hotel room. You can do that later. It doesn't happen so much anymore, but it used to be commonplace. And the bottom line is, everybody is taken such a step up in their ability to perform and be in front of people. Unfortunately, for almost 9 months now, our musical habits have been taken away from us by this awful disease. And I pray that everybody who's listening or watching or whatever is taking proper strides so that we can return to normal sooner than later. I mean, I can't even say when it's going to happen, but I'd like to think by the end of second quarter 2021, I'd like to think that there will be, concerts again. There's these vaccines in the air and antidotes and all kinds of stuff. I think over the next couple months, we're going to be able to figure it out. Not that this is a political message, but I think the fresh change in our administration will offer us at least the potential and the possibility, because all I'm hearing is common sense out of these people right now. And up until November, all I heard was madness. And there was somebody serving their own agenda. I think, in Washington, D.C., the things that come out of there have to think about us and not the individual. And that's a tough thing to do. What an intoxicating, powerful position being the president is. And I don't really want the gig, but over the last 4 years, I've said at least 100 times, I could do that better. And that's just me. I'm not trying to turn this into a political thing by any means, because the only reason I bring that around is because had we gotten a jump on what was going on a little bit earlier and somebody who would acknowledge we do have a problem, let's get after this. Had we had a 2-month head start on this, we wouldn't be here right now. And that's a shame. And it's a pity for all the hardships that people have had to suffer this year. It's like going to a rock concert while it's, in our normal life is a very important, fun, wonderful thing. Right now, it's a little bit lower down on the list. And as much as we'd like to be able to go out and do that, hell, I'd like to invite 20 of my friends right over, over here right now. And, let's break open a couple of bottles of champagne and celebrate that we're alive. And that ain't going to happen right now. I'm going to wait a little while for that.
Yeah. Well, we can only hope, that the reality and, the truth. I mean, we can handle reality. It's just when we get the games and the lies and the mistruths, that's the hard part. But getting back to rock and roll here.
Yeah, let's stay with that.
Now, I know the book has been about 4 years in the making, and obviously you've had incredible stories over the course of your years in promotion. Tell us about when you really decided. I know a lot of people say, I got a book in me, but when you pulled the trigger, I know you talked about having the ghostwriter, the guy on the Shark Tank, but
Right.
tell us about the impetus to like, all right, it's begun. I'm going to make this book. I'm putting all my photos together and I'm pulling all the stories out of my memory.
You know, the funny thing about this is we all have in us anything that we want to do. What keeps us from doing it is going to the next step or the next step or the next step after that and just following our feet one after another. What is it you want to do? Identify what that is. In my case, I originally wanted to be a promoter. I stayed with it. I kept doing what I thought was right. And lo and behold, it worked. But half of that is getting there. The next half is staying there and continuing and thriving. And I got to do that. And I'm not going to say I'm a genius or I did anything greater than anybody else. I did something that anybody can do if they focus. And it's a very it's like anything else we do. You have to stay with it. And at this stage, to be still promoting concerts, I'm so glad. I had no idea that I would be doing it for this long. But the fact is as long as the groups and the audiences are still there and willing to come, that means we're all doing something right. They're playing well. You guys are making enough money to buy tickets. I'm still interested enough to keep on bringing this. And if it wasn't me, it would be somebody else. But it's a challenge, but it's a great bit of fun. What was the last show you went to?
Oh boy, that is a really good question.
You're gonna laugh at you're gonna laugh when I tell you what my last one was.
What was it?
March 13th, 2020. Of all the groups with all the names, Air Supply.
Wow.
I booked them in the Casino Talking Stick that I book, and it's a beautiful place. But that was, it was a band that I booked. Very good band, big fans, very popular here. Mm-hmm. And that's right when everything was coming down. And what was amazing back then was, there were people calling up going, how can you go through with this show? And I'm thinking to myself, what do you know that I don't know? Obviously, we've all been hearing about what was going on over the previous couple of weeks. But for me to have Air Supply as the last show that I ever put on or saw, instead of like Roger Waters or King Crimson or, Montrose, well, he's dead. Kick-ass shows. It's remarkable.
Yeah, it really is. Now, tell us about the book, because I know it's chock full of stories and photos. Please titillate our viewers and listeners here to some of the reasons why you're calling it All Excess.
Well, I've always written from the time I was a kid. I wrote some stuff at the beginning of the book to try to set up how or why I became a concert promoter. And a lot of that had to do with chasing ball players around for autographs and wanting to share their space, their air, for just how cool they were and how much I admired them. And I wanted to know them. I wanted to know about them. And I got to know a lot of sports guys. And as time went on in the 60s, which is where I'm from, then all this fantastic music came out, the Beatles, the Stones, all the great English bands, the Dave Clark Five. And it's segued into a whole bunch of great new American rock bands. And then you had the San Francisco period. And it just carried me away, and it took me away from sports. And I just knew that I wanted to be involved in this somehow. And as a kid, you don't have the internet, you don't have Facebook, you don't have Twitter, you don't have any of this stuff. You're reading local papers. Somewhere around the mid to late 60s, Rolling Stones showed up. Somebody was very smart, that guy Jan Wenner. He was very smart, because there was this culture out there that was begging for news and information about the music that we listen to. And how do we find out about music? From our friends, right? And some of us were smart enough to pay attention to lists like top 40 lists. In my case, in the early 60s, I went to a record store and picked up a top 40, they called it the Silver Dollar Survey. And that's how I discovered the Beatles. Nobody else I knew who the Beatles were. But here's this group, the Beatles, with two T's. It's in the book. I didn't do it. And I love them and I love this song. But for almost a year, none of my friends would engage me about this song because they just didn't get it. It was such a different song called Please Please Me. And everybody knows that song. But at the time, nobody did. It wasn't until I Want to Hold Your Hand and She Loves You came out on Ed Sullivan where people finally understood the Beatles. And that's where that magic came through the TV tube, the black and white 8-inch TV tube that we had in our homes at the time. It changed the world. That's why we have jobs, and that's why we're here talking about music, is because of that moment. I mean, there's nothing like it. There was a life-changing night when the Beatles appeared on Ed Sullivan.
No question. I was 5 and my family moved to England like a month later. So I'm not only in love with rock and roll, but I am going into the vortex of the British invasion.
I'm envious. What an amazing time that would have been to live in the UK.
Yeah, it was. They had a supplement to the daily paper once a week, and you could decide if you wanted the sports supplement or like the pop music supplement. I told my parents, get the pop music supplement. So every week there's this, colorful supplement to the newspaper we got. And
did you save any of them?
Yeah, and we had Top of the Pops every week on TV, which lasted 40, 50 years.
Did you save any of those?
I should have some in storage.
My God. I mean, those, I never heard about those and I wasn't aware of that. I was so smitten by the Beatles. I loved the cartoon show. Any chance I got news about them, it set me up for what I do. I mean, I was so excited about them every time I heard them. And then later on in life to actually work with George and be with Ringo and guarantee Paul McCartney a fortune to do a show, knowing hands down, this was not a risk. All I had to do was get my hands on the money to do the show. And that was first time I did Paul was in 1990. And it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. No question.
So satisfying to stand there and look at the show and the fact that you were responsible for bringing this to the market and, giving those people an amazing show. Because Paul, to me, is still the greatest living songwriter and performer. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
You got no argument here.
Wow. So having done over 5,000 interviews in my day in radio and TV, it's amazing how many rock stars go back to that moment. The Ed Sullivan Show is the reason they bug their parents to get a guitar, buy a drum kit, and whatever. And you can just only imagine how noisy the garages of America became. I mean, on every block there was a garage band plugging in and making a racket.
In my case, my brother bought a beautiful set of Ludwig, the silver sparkle set. And it was the exact same setup as Ringo's. And that's what we learned how to play drums on by playing 45s and albums really loud through a crummy speaker. But we played along with those songs, and our guys, other than the Beatles were the first. We're also, of course, the Stones and the Dave Clark Five, but then there was things like, all of a sudden Paul Butterfield comes out, and Spirit. I love Spirit. I mean, how is Spirit not like revered as one of the greatest American bands of all time?
I just yesterday listened to the
Sardonicus. Did I know?
Mr. Skin, Fresh Garbage, Nature's Way.
And as a promoter, I feel like I owe it to all those people to talk about them, especially if they're still alive and they're able to perform and come to town. The more obscure, the better for me, because it's like, I love calling up a media person and guilt tripping them saying, what do you mean it doesn't show up on your research? Brand X, play the music. Tell people to go to the show. I'll take care of the rest. It's incredible. Like Adrian Belew is out there, one of the most incredible artists of all time. And it's like, he goes to town and can he sell 500 tickets? Is that a joke? I mean, it's a bad joke. And there's 100 of those guys. Al Di Meola, right? Sean Phillips. All these names of these people that in the 70s and the 80s were magic. And that's what definitely keeps me going in this. That's why I wanted to write a book. I wanted to tell people about, some of the people that I've been fortunate enough to meet and work with throughout the years. And, there's big stuff in there like Led Zeppelin and Grateful Dead and Pink Floyd and so forth. And it's all very interesting. But there's all these other groups that never popped as big as them. But to me, musically, were every bit as good. And for whatever reason, they were just a little bit too deep, or they looked a little too weird, or they came along at the wrong time. And it didn't happen. But I mean, Gentle Giant, King Crimson, who have had a great resurgence over the last few years. The prog bands was where I was at in the 70s. But I also loved my folk heroes like John Prine and Steve Goodman, and all the rest of the Gene Clark and the Byrds. There's a million guys out there. There's the music that's out there available for all of us to listen to at any time. It's right there. And there's so many people, I think, who need to hear this music to try to balance their minds and their spirits, because music is such a therapeutic, thing for our everyday life. There's a lot of stress out there, and I'm sure we've all noticed it's been very weird and stressful this last year. And bottom line, you go get into that 20 minutes per side of an LP and put it on your turntable, and you watch some of those blues melt away for a few minutes. And that's what life's about. Get a little relief, take a break, and go to your, from Happy Gilmore, the happy place. And you'll be better after that, and you'll do better with what you do next.
Yeah, where can you find that instant escapism where you drop the needle or hit play, and you're just taken away into the brilliance of greatness, and you can still work and do whatever you're doing during it, but it's the soundtrack to your life, especially these days.
Yeah,
can't imagine a day without music.
Well, and like I was saying, what's so important for us guys and people, girls, whoever that were around in the earlier days, it's remarkable how I think the sounds that were made in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s are still so relevant and coherent today. And it's important, I think, for radio to grasp that and share its culture. such strong memories. What you get from those songs, and not just the popular ones. There's deeper things. People have the ability to retain and take in more input than, turning on classic rock radio and hearing My Best Friend's Girl by the Cars for the 16,000th time. It's like, enough. Great song. Wish I wrote it. Wish I had the royalties. I don't ever want to hear it again because it's not relevant anymore. There's no band. What about all those great bands from the 70s and 80s that are still out there, ready to rock, ready to play? They deserve people's attention in the media, especially when they're good, not when they're crummy. Hell with them. To the side of the road if you suck. But when you're a great band, and there's so many great bands still out there, all they've done all their life is to play music, and they practice and they perform. You got to get out and see these people, because that's all they can do anymore. They're not going to make any money anymore off records and publishing and all that kind of stuff, because nobody's buying hard product anymore, which is a disaster. I love playing records, and I don't mind CDs a bit. I just bought a new car, and after I bought the car, I went, where's my CD player? There isn't one in there. What? How is that possible? I don't get it. It's like Outlook, updating their system and changing everything around so you can't find anything. It's really, really weird.
Yeah. Well, not only have you served your community well and, enlightened, the environment and the citizens, but you were always at the cutting edge of taking a chance. You had these new little bands like AC/DC and Van Halen and Judas Priest and, all of these bands that are now household names and instantly sell out. But at the time, like you said, you didn't know if they could pull 500 tickets or 1,000 or what, but it must be so, comforting to see that artists take off. That's got to be the greatest joy, is the rise.
Absolutely.
Of an icon.
It's like raising a kid, getting involved with people in their career, because, maybe there's an agent who you've dealt with before and he goes, hey man, you got to check out this new band. And they send you a record in the mail. They don't download something and send it to you on a computer. You get an actual gift in the mail, a product, and it's 12 by 12, and it's a record album. And you get to play it, and they're waiting for you to call them because you don't have email. So they want a phone call saying, dude, I just got this record. When can I book them? And that's how it worked. When you needed to publicize a show, they sent you a dozen 8x10s and a dozen bios so you could send them out. Now it's all electronic. I don't mind that. It's a lot handier to do it that way and way less expensive for everybody. But I loved the fact of holding a hard piece of evidence in your hands. And that's how it was made. I mean, it wasn't just creating the music and downloading it. It was creating the music and then sending it to the pressing plant to have vinyl made, or even the tapes, the cassettes, or the 8-tracks. I'm not saying that was a better time than it is now. Yeah, I am. I'm saying that it was way cooler, because I have at home, and I'd love to show it to you sometime, I have a wall of records. Many of them are signed, and I've weeded through it so many times because there were so many of them, and I still have thousands of them. And they're all great records. And I would play any one of them for you and try to figure out a way to say, this is why you should buy this record, or here, I'll give it to you, or whatever. It's an amazing thing. And all of that fascination with these musicians and the music itself during the cultural times when it came out and existed made me become a promoter, and it made me come to the point where I'm going, boy, I know there's a lot of really cool people out there that come to my shows, and I appreciate all of them so much. And as do the bands, by the way. I mean, we all love the fact that we get to make a living by arranging the thousands of elements that it takes to put on a concert, and just to get to those guys on the stage and performing. And it's about fans, which comes from the word fanatics. You can use that in your trivia test sometime, because I never knew that. When somebody pointed that out to me at a big conversation, we're fanatics. We're fanatics to put on shows. We're fanatics to share information, have great radio shows like yours, or we're fanatics because we love music, and we can't wait to be the first one to tell somebody, go to this show, buy this record. You got to come over and listen to this. It's a balancer of all the other BS that goes on in life that brings you down or challenges you. Music is your friend, and it's always there.
Yeah, I know there's thousands of experience in this book, and it's just action packed for those that love music, those that live for concerts, those that want to hear about the wild, wild west, you know, how you took some risks and some of them paid off and some of them didn't, but you're still standing and you're still able to bring the best of what you can to your audiences. And I know, you know, Phoenix and Arizona is certainly, you know, the better for it. And, you know, I know you do shows in Las Vegas and New Mexico. Why is it the perfect markets for you? Because obviously you're just outside of Los Angeles, which is the giant market here, but you're close enough where it's that few hour drive, you know, so fans want to see them twice can even go to both or all the shows.
Yeah, I started in Phoenix, and I never had any thoughts whatsoever about expanding. I mean, for me to get to the point of doing this show in like 70, I started in 74, but like in 77, I had my first real gig, and it was booking a nightclub called Dooley's here in Tempe, which is legendary. And we had incredible shows there. The first play in the market for Cheap Trick or Police or Joe Jackson. First play in the market for Talking Heads, $6. I'm still here to talk about it. I mean, think about that one. Buildings and Food, $6. Incredible. I used to collect baseball cards, and I was a memorabilia freak for sports long before music. And that went into music. But I pinched myself every day that I woke up, as I still do. And I'm going, is it over yet? And the answer is no. I mean, I'm in this, for keeps. Being around bands when they were kids, and then now see them 30, 40 years later, 20 years later, whatever. I mean, I did the first Pearl Jam show here. Nirvana. What a piece of work these people were. No Doubt. Black Crowes. This is like another generation later of great rock bands. It was truly remarkable to be with those people then, because you don't know then that they're going to become what they became now 20 years ago. So you don't treat them bad or anything. I've always believed in like Black Crowes had a great song out, and No Doubt had those great songs from that record. And that's all you're working off of. You're not working off of a career of songs. I mean, like, these people are now 20, 30 years into it. But how about when they're 20, 30 weeks into it? They were like newborns, and you had to take care of them, and you had to treat them right. And for the most part, what happens is when you do treat them right and you have great shows, that's how they learned. And I was ahead of them. I was already the experienced guy, and they come in as rookies, and now they're so many more times huger than me as their own entities, but most of them remember. Most of them still say, well, we got to work with Danny when we come to town. He helped us. He's our buddy. And you know, and the ones that don't, of which there are plenty, because they've drunk the Kool-Aid, and somebody goes and offers them $30 or $40 million for a tour when they couldn't get $500 from me years ago, and they take the big money. And you know what? God bless. Good for you. I don't blame them ever. It doesn't mean I'm not a little sad that I'm not doing the show myself and continuing that relationship. But in most cases, sooner or later, they all come back around and we get together, whether it's socially or professionally, and doing another show. But, you know, obviously the world's changed in that regard. And bottom line, regardless of how it works, I know, like you and everybody else, we want to return to going back to shows the way that we know how to go to them and have a good time. I mean, that's our release. This is what we do. It's part of our makeup. Concerts, music, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, coming up through the 70s and 80s, you know, the regional concert promoter had that loyalty, you know, with the acts. They knew their audience. The record labels were run by music guys, the Herb Alberts and Jerry Mosses and Clive Davis and Joe Smith and Mo Austins. You know, this is, you know, the prime era. And anytime we can, you know, support that, it's so important, because as a music fan and lover of live events and recorded music, you know, we can tell that they put that extra care into it. It wasn't just a widget on a spreadsheet, you know, somewhere in a corporate boardroom.
You know, obviously that was going on amongst a lot of people back then. You had guys like me or you who, you know, first and foremost, you react to what you hear or what you see, or that meeting, or the chance opportunity when you walked into some place you weren't planning on. And this fantastic band's performing. And the next thing you know, they're huge. And then the next thing you know, in a lot of other cases, more cases, they're not huge. It didn't stick. That's what makes this such an exciting world in business to be in for all these years. And it makes me feel like there's so much more to come in terms of talent and creation and all the compositions that are ahead of us that we still haven't heard yet. Right now, I kind of feel like we're in a lull. There's a lot of really popular, terrific singers and bands out there, but it seems like the whole world turned into boy bands or girl bands or popness, and I'm missing bands. You know, Greta Van Fleet was probably one of the last ones to actually cross over and make those rock and roll sounds that make us all, you know, want to move and groove. I know there's many other groups out there that are fantastic and great, but how many of them since Greta Van Fleet? Give me three. I need some help with this. How many great bands have
well, we're definitely supportive of Rival Sons and the Struts and, you know, Dirty Honey. You know, they're
I don't know the Struts or Dirty Honey.
Yeah.
I don't know them. Rival Sons, fantastic. They were in this very room that we're in before their first record came out. I did shows with them before they got signed. Fantastic band. Haven't talked to them years. When you talk to them, tell them Danny says hi.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's so great to join with you. Our special guest has been Danny ZELISKO. You need to go out and get the book. It's all access for all you music lovers. You are going to treasure the photos and stories for life. And a forward by, of course, the legendary Dodger, Kirk Gibson, who hit that World World Series winning home run right here in Los Angeles. But go to dzplive.com, get your copy of the book, support promoters, real music guys like Danny here. And we can't wait to our next conversation when everything's
Hey, Jay,
back.
I got to tell you something for the road. You see this room we're in?
Yes.
This is Kirk Gibson's bedroom.
Is that right?
In 2010, he was named manager of the Diamondbacks. And I own this house. It's right down the street from where I live. It's 2 doors away. I live on a street with 5 houses. So I bought this house because I had so much stuff and it was such a good deal. I couldn't help but buy it. So I stored cars and my memorabilia and all kinds of different stuff that I've now moved around. But then I had this house, and right here where I'm sitting was the head of the bed. My wife had all this furniture from Vegas when she moved in after she married me. And Gibby calls me, that's what I call him. He calls me up, he goes, "Hey man, I've been so busy with taking over the Diamondbacks, I don't have a place to stay. Could I stay at your other house?" And I said, "Sure." He goes, "I'll only be a while. I'll hardly ever be there. I won't get in your hair." So he lived here for most of 2011. And in 2011, that was when I had somehow joined up with Live Nation, and we parted ways around Valentine's Day 2011. I didn't know if I was going to continue to do concerts anymore. And then Kirk moved out around a little after Memorial Day, got a bigger place for his family. And this turned into my office. This is my office. So it's so funny how things work out that way. But Kirk Gibson is a huge, huge music fan. I got him comped and a meet and greet with Iggy Pop with Bob Melvin. Just hilarious. Another story.
Yeah, well, the
Anyway.
synergy between sports and music is just endless. We all know the sports guys want to be rockers, and all the rockers wish they were sports guys. You know, it's the age old synergy between us.
It's incredible. Years ago, I did a thing with Hue Lewis in the news for a charity thing, and we played baseball against a bunch of Hall of Famers here in Tempe, and Huey had uniforms made up. It said the news across the jersey, and I was the catcher. Huey was the pitcher. We had Brooks Robinson and Tom Tresh and Juan Marichal, Milt Pappas, all these fantastic ball players, and they all wanted to be us. And we all want to be them. It just fantastic, just fantastic. One other thing I also want to mention, and it's a new thing for me, as a collector, which I write about in this book, of baseball stuff, football, sports stuff. I stopped doing that pretty much years ago because I got busy with music, but I still have all that stuff. And I've got all this stuff that I've collected from the music world. And I actually went to this company called Invaluable Auctions. And I have my first sale ever. I put 300 pieces up with Invaluable Auctions. And we're going to sell them next Saturday, December the 12th. At 9 a.m. Pacific time, we're doing an auction of those things. You guys ought to, just for the hell of it, just go take a peek and see what's on there. There's some fun stuff. I'm going to keep doing that because I want to support my office. I want to keep this place open. I want to pay the people who help me out every day until we're ready to get back to doing concerts. So it's not like I'm partying with kids or anything like that. I'm partying with items that I've collected with great passion. But I think it's now time to share those with people who really love these bands. And if they want, it's out there. And in the meantime, there's this book. Look at this. I just got a brand new version of it, and it's done the right size, because usually the book is like this. I originally printed it this size, like that, meaning all this wording would go the other way. Oh, here, look, wait a minute. So this is the book that I'm selling. It's 8.5 by 11. I just got this one. I swear to God, as we got on Zoom today, and this is the normal size book. And this is what's going to end up coming out again in the next couple of weeks. I love this book. I know your audience would love it too. It's as cool as it gets. And with a little help, maybe I'll be encouraged to do another one.
Well, it's very honorable that you're keeping your workers on, and I know that memorabilia is going to find homes of people that weren't as connected as you and have a piece of music history hanging on their wall. You know, who doesn't want that in their man cave? I mean, it's unbelievable.
You're so right. I mean, this stuff is so cool. I wish I could show you around on here. Maybe we could do a Facebook Live thing or something sometime, and I can walk you through. It's truly like I live in the Hall of Fame. I love it.
Wow. Again, our guest has been Danny ZELISKO. It is all access, and you need to go to the website that we gave you, and that is dzplive.com. Danny, what a pleasure. Can't wait to do a follow-up with you.
All right, Jay, anytime. Love to talk to you, bro. Keep rocking.